Namaste. Today we are in Himalayan Hermitage Ashram with Swami Bodhichitananda ji. This is the place where the nature meets within you. Namaste, Swamiji.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Swamiji, you are a disciple of Swami Chidananda ji.
Yes.
And how this journey started, which brings you in India, Rishikesh?
It started when I was in architecture school in college, and we saw history of architecture. And first I saw that there were certain geniuses who expressed divinity through art and architecture, and you could see that expression of God coming through them. And also I heard in music at that time that there were certain genius musicians who had touched that, and you could experience a higher consciousness or God through that. And I realized that architecture is really wonderful. I love it, and all these other things are wonderful, but my life is for God. So I left everything. I just walked away from everything, begging my food, living under trees for some years. Eventually, actually my first teacher was Baha'i. He was from Germany, but he brought me to the Baha'i faith. He had studied Gurdjieff and many of the Western mystics. And from him, I finally, after some years, I ended up at the ashrams of Paramahamsa Yogananda. I was living in my van in San Diego, California, and I used to go to Balboa Park in San Diego to do my yoga. And I had already started meditating a little bit, but mainly I was doing yoga. And so one day I prayed to God. I said, I've heard that Hatha yoga is not true yoga. Please teach me true yoga. So within a few days, I found myself on the doorstep of the ashrams of Paramahamsa Yogananda Self-Realization Fellowship in California. And I went to the head monk, and I said, I think I'm supposed to live here. He said, well, you can't live here, but maybe I'll give you a job here in construction department. He did, and eventually I got initiated into Kriya Yoga, and then I became a monk. But one day I saw a photo of Swami Chidananda, the successor of Swami Shivananda, and I recognized him. And it became apparent to the head, Sri Dayamata, who was the successor of Yogananda, that I had been with Swami Chidananda in my past life. So she said, I need to leave and go to India and meet Swamiji. And that's how I joined Shivananda Ashram in 1991. And I served Swami Chidananda as one of his personal attendants. And I stayed there for 13 years. But I wanted to live eco-friendly. I felt that these big institution ashrams were not leading the way in expressing nonviolence, ahimsa. We should be living, our ashrams should be living ahimsa, and showing people how to live nonviolently with the planet and with other beings. So that's how I finally came to start living in the forest. My ashram here is right here is the Tiger Reserve, Rajaji Tiger Park. And I have animals coming here all the time. I live alone in the forest. I have 2 guest rooms, and sometimes some people come, but they need to be practitioners. I'm not backpackers. So I need to know who they are a little bit, or my students come to stay and do some practice here. So beyond that, what would you like to know?
What is the meditation?
Oh, what is my meditation? Well, when I came to India and I came to Swami Chidananda, I had been practicing Kriya Yoga And I knew I had been a Kriya yogi before because that's what I started doing automatically before I even came to Yogananda ashrams. And so when I came to India, I did not want to take japa initiation into mantra. I wanted to practice Kriya Yoga. I told Swami Chidananda that. He had no problem. He loved Yogananda, and he loved Sri Dayamata, the successor. So Swamiji sent me to Swami Gyanananda Giri. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He was a Swiss Swami. He walked to India in 1952. He walked from Switzerland in 1952 after reading Autobiography of a Yogi. He joined Yogananda's ashrams in Bengal, and eventually he retired to the Himalayas after 12 years. And he was living down from Mussoorie and later in Dehradun. And so I used to go to him for guidance in Kriya Yoga, and then he told me to give Kriya Yoga to others also. So I'm authorized in the lineage of Yogananda to initiate people into Kriya Yoga. I don't initiate into japa unless somebody really, really wants it, because I am from Swami Chidananda, so I can, but I don't practice that. I only practice nirguna mantras, like Hamsa. That's part of Kriya Yoga. So that is the practice I do, and that is like I teach seminars in Europe, and when people invite me somewhere to give a teaching, and my best teaching is in the Kriya Yoga line. That's my favorite. That's what I love. That's not what I know how to teach the best. So.
And what the difference you found in the spirituality learning from the Indian student and the spirituality learned by the Western student?
Well, the main thing I would say is, first of all, traditionally the Indians have had a very harmonious family life growing up. So they don't have a lot of shadows in the unconscious. It's not as strong. Yeah. Westerners have had much more disjointed social structure. So they have issues a lot of times that need to be dealt with. Another thing is that in India, traditionally, the culture has been a spiritual culture, not just a religious culture, but a spiritual culture, both. So this is part of the osmosis of the unconscious, the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung would say, you know. So it's easier, they have the basic foundation already. So it's easy to talk to them about spirituality, whether or not they're going to practice it as much. But I think when you have the shadows and you practice, it might take more effort. Where if you really practice and you've got this cultural upbringing, a lot of times it can be easier in a sense. You know, you can go a little bit more directly. Of course, India is changing. It's changed a lot since I've been here since 1991. It's changed tremendously. So, but that still is there. I don't think that it's just like Rishikesh. You know, when I was saying earlier, when I came to Rishikesh originally, there was one hotel. Now you say there's 800 hotels. You know, but I will still say that Rishikesh is a very holy place, because for thousands of years, yogis have been coming there doing sadhana. So it's still there, even though there's this pollution and the rickshaws and and the salesmen and all these hotels and everything. But it's still there. Scratch the surface and you'll find it.
And what is the Ganga for you?
Oh. Well, there's multiple levels to that. The lowest level is it's like the hero with 1,000 faces. Have you ever heard this phrase? Joseph Campbell did this research into traditional cultures and about forming hero types. You know, in India, the hero type was a saint. Traditionally, hero types were saintly or powerful, like shamans or saints. you know. Now, of course, in the West, because they took the saints away with Protestantism, it became movie stars and football stars and stuff like that, and, you know, politicians and stuff, which is not a good hero image to grow up to. But anyway, so part of that too is that in every culture, they would have their sacred mountain, they would have their sacred rivers, because the area, the mandala, as in Tibetan Buddhism, that area that your consciousness is encapsulated in, you know, like for a tribe, there would be a certain area, you know, that's grown as we've come out of tribalism. But they all had their sacred land, their sacred river, their sacred mountain, and their creation stories, you know. Everybody had a creation story. You have to, you know, and they're heroes. So on that level, every culture had sacred rivers. But I think some rivers are more sacred than others. And something about certain rivers in India, I'm not saying these kind of sacred rivers are not in other places, because I'm sure they are, but you really experience it probably the most with the Ganga, the Narmada, you know, and the Yamuna, you know, those, I don't know about Brahmaputra, I've never seen it, but those three rivers especially, I can't say about the Saraswati because maybe it's in Badrinath, I'm not sure, but those rivers have a real power, and Mother Ganga has probably the most power. And even science has proven that the Ganga has at least the ability to purify itself, whether it's minerals coming from the glaciers and the Himalayas or whatever it is, we don't know, but, well, I mean, we do know, because Mother Ganga is a sacred river. So rivers traditionally are the pranic lines in Mother Earth. So in India, we have Mount Kailash, which was supposed to be the Sahasrara chakra of the earth. And then we had 5 rivers coming from Mount Kailash, but 3 main ones coming into India, the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati. So those are the Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna of the earth. So that's why I think, I can't remember, I think Ganga is actually the Ida, I think. Yamuna is the Pingala, and I think Saraswati was the Sushumna. I'm not sure, but I think it was that way. So those rivers are very powerful pranic currents, and if you bathe in them, like if the tradition in India is you bathe in the Ganga and all your sins are washed away, but they're hanging in the trees waiting to jump back on you when you get out of Mother Ganga. So it's not quite that easy, but it helps a lot. You know, just like having the darshan of a saint. There's many ways to have a darshan of a saint. Even if a saint looks at you, it can be darshan, you know, or thinking of a saint can be a darshan, you know, so that helps to uplift you in a certain way and remove some of your karmas and give you a glimpse of your own true nature or the nature of Brahman. So Mother Ganga is very powerful, and I think anyone who takes a bath in Mother Ganga will know that that's true.
And what is your experience with the Ganga?
Just what I said. But, you know, the thing about Kriya Yoga is all these elements that we're discussing. The point of Kriya Yoga was to internalize it all. Because in Tantra, that's what Tantra did. It internalized. It said, okay, I mean, in the Vedas, we had the fire sacrifice, the fire on the external sense, doing the yajna to help build society, to help get boons, you know. Then the rishis went in, they said, okay, the fire, they say the fire is in us, so we can meditate on the fire in us. So they went into the forest to meditate. They didn't need to do the yajna anymore. They knew the yoga was within them. So that's up until, until the time of the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutras and the Buddha and Mahavir starting around 500 BC, that kind of transition. And then starting around, then we had the Bhakti movement because of the Greeks coming into India. They actually brought the Bhakti movement. People don't know that. That's how we got the Murtis, because the Greeks became Buddhist, and then they wanted to have an image. They were used to having Greek idols, so they were in Afghanistan, the Greeks, and they started making the first images of Buddha. If you see the first images, they're Greek style, And then that came into India, and we started this whole Bhakti movement, creating the images and the temples. That's because in the Vedic period, there weren't really temples. There was the yajna.
Yes, absolutely.
So anyway, then after that came the tantras, because they said, okay, if that fire's there, then this is the temple. So they started mapping the whole temple and saying everything we need is right here. And then they went into the nadis, the whole pranic system, and then Patanjali went into the mind because of the Buddha, really. He got influenced by Buddhism. So we had this whole science, both of the mind and of the whole pranic system. And Kriya Yoga is one of the main approaches that says you can be of any religion and practice this. And you can be a follower of Jesus, you can be a follower of Ram, Shiva, whoever. It doesn't matter. You need devotion, or you could just follow your guru, do guru yoga. But because everything you need is right here, the whole pranic system, your heart, focusing in devotion, all of your emotional desires, through meditation, concentrating the mind, and then bringing more prana up using Kriya Yoga to awaken the higher centers and burning out the karmas. So everything we need is internalized. That's why I love Kriya Yoga so much, because it's more of a science. It doesn't leave religion. Religion is the vehicle that brings us to the interior. A lot of people want to get rid of religion. No, religion is very valuable. All religions are valuable, because for those who haven't learned to internalize the practice, they need it on the external form. That's why we do rituals also. Our body is involved, to help focus our mind. And gradually we go in, we learn how to focus it within. And we find, that's why like Yogananda's Bhagavad Gita and Lahiri Mahasay's Bhagavad Gita, they map out all of the characters in the Bhagavad Gita in you, in your own mind, what they are representing in you.
Namaste.
Oh, is that the end of it?
Yeah, for today.
All right, so my name is Swami Bodhichitananda, and if somebody who wants to practice, not take a backpacking, see what's the cheapest place you can possibly find. I'm not, we take donations. I don't charge, but we do take donations for people staying here. They can ask me questions. They can practice. I can help them with their practice some. I'm not giving like a seminar kind of thing here, but I can help people, and they can give whatever donation they feel inspired to give if they stay here. If you are a Swami, you don't charge. If you charge, you're a businessman. If you're in a white cloth and you charge, that's okay. You didn't renounce worldly desires fully. You have obligations. But a Swami cannot charge. I'm sorry to tell you that. We live by charity.
Yes, Swamiji, right. People can do business and all, but Swamiji is only for the spiritual part.
Only. But in giving for the spiritual knowledge, which a Swami should have some knowledge to give, it's the duty of the householder who's not a Swami to support the Swamis.
Yes.
And that's been lost in large measure. And, you know, that's actually, the tradition says that there are 3 ways to support the Dharma. Renounce the world and become a Swami. Do service to an organization, or to a Swami, or to some spiritual organization. That's the second one. The third one is financial. Give money. If you can't go do service, the best is you do service and give some donation. You know, but the highest, of course, is you renounce the worldly desires and become a sannyasi. And that is the best thing you can do. Because there's only one duty in life, only one duty, that is to gain liberation, self-knowledge. You'll say so many duties. There are other duties, but they're self-created. Once you create them, you have to fulfill them. Anyway.
I know.
I know.